Hey guys, welcome back. Thanks for joining me for another video. If you are new to my channel, my name is Stephanie. I am a life and relationship coach. If you are a subscriber, welcome back. Thank you. And if you are new, don't forget to hit the subscribe button down below. This video is long overdue, and I'm hoping and praying that I can relay this information in very normal terms, because when we start reading about post-traumatic stress disorder, borderline personality disorder, when we start getting into like psychology stuff, sometimes it can be a little overwhelming and we don't really understand the information. So my thing is, I've always tried to be relatable and make sure that this information kind of makes sense, because I know when I was going through all of my journey basically, and I was learning about all of these things, as I would read things or articles or watch videos or listen to podcasts, it would just be too much. I just wanted like the layman's terms for everything, for me to kind of like understand things. So here's hoping I can deliver today. Post-traumatic stress disorder after narcissistic abuse. Something that I really want to go over because a lot of people experience it. Mostly everyone who is in a long-term relationship with someone who's narcissistic is going to experience it. Some of this stuff is going to be black and white. This just is in terms of psychology, and some of it is going to be my own opinions, coming from my own experiences. So I look at post-traumatic stress as, and I'm sure if we've all heard of that term before, we think of someone who has been at war and has been in very extreme situations, where they're, fighting for their life, or just very dangerous situations where their life was at risk and it caused themselves to almost be paranoid, then coming back to reality and maybe struggling with their day-to-day lives because they're going through post-traumatic stress, right? They're living through something that was very traumatic. And now not in that traumatic environment, but still experiencing symptoms of being in that traumatic environment. So typically when we do think of post-traumatic stress, we of course think of someone who has been through a traumatic event. 9/11, definitely a traumatic event. And since we are approaching that anniversary, it can trigger up a lot of, post-traumatic stress, and it can trigger a lot of things within ourselves. A lot of people were scared of flying after that event. So it wasn't even that they experienced the event themselves. They weren't in the towers, but watching the news over and over again, and because most people have a lot of empathy, we felt what it could have been like to be in those shoes. And so maybe some people became nervous and anxious when they began flying. Maybe we began to look at certain types of people as a threat to ourselves because we see this traumatic event and we want to link things. So let's get into this in terms of narcissistic abuse. So one of the symptoms that I really hear often when I'm dealing with clients who are either coming out of this relationship, one that was maybe emotionally abusive or a narcissistically abusive relationship, is the intrusive thoughts, the reliving the experience. So this is when we're having flashbacks. This is when we're going back and remembering that argument that we had with that person. This is when we begin having nightmares where this person is just, or maybe not nightmares, but maybe this person is constantly in our dreams. So all of those things, the reliving of experiences, is a symptom of post-traumatic stress. The next thing is avoiding. So this is where, if it was a specific event, like for example 9/11, where people are avoiding flying or getting on planes, or we got robbed at this corner in the city and now we want to avoid that, where we were in a terrible relationship and we are linking pain to being in a relationship because that was what happened in my past. And so we're going to avoid getting into relationships again, and we're going to stay single for maybe the rest of our lives or extended period of time. It's where we want to avoid putting ourselves in possibly the same shoes that we were when we experienced the pain that we experienced. So this is where, if you are perhaps a veteran and you hear a loud bang, right? Maybe that might startle you because maybe you were in a situation at war where a bomb went off or a gun was fired or something like that, and you were scared for your life. So those are all signs of emotional numbness, right? Where we start to almost want to be jumpy and jittery in certain environments, or we just want to avoid them altogether. The other thing is where, because we're reliving these experiences, because we're still living in that space, we have trouble sleeping, we have trouble concentrating, we have trouble just really enjoying normal activities of life because that event is constantly in our minds. It's something that we're talking about all the time. It's something that we're reliving all the time. And it's taking over our day-to-day life, where it almost becomes an obsessive thought or an obsessive way of living where we're paranoid constantly. We could be paranoid that we might run into our ex. That's something that definitely is a thing. We might get very jittery and uncomfortable when we know that we could possibly see them or that we are going to see them, and we get very anxious and nervous at the thought of having to talk to this person again or interact with them in any way, or go to court and have to get divorced and have to go toe to toe with this person. We tend to get a little, I don't want to say skittish, but we're not as confident in ourselves because we know we're about to go toe to toe with the lion. So all of those types of things are definitely signs of fear and post-traumatic stress of something that you had gone through with this person that still lives inside of you. It's basically a wound that needs to be tended to that you're not tending to, and it's manifesting in all of these different ways. So under these three categories, where we're talking about almost like emotional numbness, where we become jittery, we can't concentrate, we can't sleep, where we want to avoid places, where we become anxious at the thought of running into someone, reliving past experiences and things over and over again. Those are like the three main categories. And underneath those categories, you can have different symptoms within each one. So for an example, a lot of people will blame themselves. So they kind of are almost picking up the disease that narcissist has left on them. All of that damage to that person's self is still in that person, and they haven't healed from it. They're going to make excuses for the behavior of the other person, or they're going to blame themselves, like I said. So a lot of that is not recognizing, I don't want to say who is at fault, because I don't want to look at it that way, but it's someone that hasn't been able to take a step back and still emotionally detach from the damage that person has done. It's someone who hasn't worked on themselves enough to start to regain their sense of self again. So a lot of people that come out of narcissistically abusive relationships go into therapy. They hire a life coach. They have to get back to not who they were, but a healthier version of who they were. So we can list all day long all of the different symptoms of post-traumatic stress when you are in a narcissistically abusive relationship. But what I really want to help you to do is to heal that part of yourself as you are experiencing these symptoms. So one of the biggest things is getting anxious and nervous at the thought of possibly running into this person. I hear that so often from clients. Another one is constantly reliving those experiences, reliving that relationship over and over again. What went wrong? Trying to figure out this person, asking yourself questions that you're never going to have an answer to, blaming yourself for possibly what may have went wrong in the relationship. And it's fine to own certain parts of yourself and say, look, this was a part of myself during that relationship that wasn't healthy. And I wish I could have done this better, right? But when we know better, we do better. And we don't blame ourselves that we did something wrong necessarily, but that we're human, and that, to me, it's almost that manipulation that the narcissist had over you to make you feel as if you are the problem and that they weren't the problem. It had nothing to do with them and always had to do with you. And you didn't do this right, and you didn't say this right, and you were nagging, or you weren't the perfect person, or whatever it is, whatever garbage that they fed you from time to time that made you devalue yourself so bad, where you became so low, possibly before you got discarded, or possibly before you got some kind of, knowing inside of yourself or strength inside of yourself to end that relationship. One of the biggest things is understanding where post-traumatic stress kind of lives and how it works. And I think that this is absolutely huge. Understanding the aspects of your brain and where events are stored, I think is interesting, but again, it doesn't really help you in terms of healing. But I want you to understand this so you really get how this works and why the post-traumatic stress kind of lives inside of you. So when an event happens to you, it gets stored in a part of your brain called the amygdala. Now, when something traumatic happens to you and it gets stored in that part of your brain, that part of your brain then communicates with your adrenal glands. So it sends a message down to your adrenal glands that are on top of your kidneys, and it says danger, danger, danger. And that's why we experience things like anxiety. So anxiety, and I've said this from the very beginning, anxiety is just your body's way of telling you something is wrong. It's telling you that you're in danger. Now, is the danger real, or is the danger something that you're making up in your head? So it's believing that anxiety is your body's way of reacting, right? to something that you're thinking. Now, what you're thinking, you get to choose whether or not this is real, whether or not this is not real, whether this is something I really need to be scared of right now in this moment, or whether this is just a worry or stress or a fear that I'm having about the future or about the past, and I'm fixated on it right now, that it's causing my body to give off a reaction, which is anxiety, which is a panic attack, which is sweaty palms, which is all of these things. Now, the thoughts that you're thinking, the obsessive thoughts that you're thinking throughout the day, if you're not mindful of it, it will cause you to have this subconscious kind of wound where you begin dreaming about this person all the time. So I always say, if you're dreaming about someone, like an ex that you know you might have a little wound with, or someone that maybe hurt you or something, and you keep having these dreams about this person, that's because there's something inside of you that you're not tending to, a thought that you've been thinking. Perhaps it's an obsessive thought. Perhaps it's, what did I do wrong? Why didn't this person love me? Like all of those kind of thoughts that you're not tending to consciously throughout the day. And it's manifesting and it's coming into your dreams. So our dreams hold our worries, our fears, everything, and they manifest. So if it's something that you're really, really stressed about, and it's something that you're thinking about over and over again, then, and maybe even perhaps blaming yourself for all the reasons why you're never going to find anyone again, and this person was right, and all the damage that they put on you, if you're not aware of the abuse that that person was giving you and you internalize it, then you're going to become obsessive. So when those glands get that message of danger, 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 they're going to set off adrenaline. And that's going to trigger your fight or flight response. And that's where the anxiety comes into play. So that fight or flight is in your limbic system. And then your limbic system controls your nervous system. Well, it communicates with your nervous system. And that's why you react with anxiety or sweaty palms or nervousness or anything like that. So it's so important, the thoughts that we think. Now, why do we have these symptoms after being in this relationship? The reason why we have these symptoms, the obsessive thoughts, the nightmares, the anxiety about possibly seeing this person, like all of these different things that we experience. The biggest one also is not wanting to get into relationships, linking relationships to danger. And when that happens, that's because we have gone through something traumatic, and we have to be aware of that. So knowing, okay, what are my symptoms of post-traumatic stress that I tend to have over and over again? For me, it was obsessive thinking. It was trying to figure out this person. It was asking all these questions that I was never going to get answers to. A lot of it also has to do with, you were the target of abuse. You were put in situations, or you were in situations where you were damaged emotionally. You didn't know any of this stuff. You didn't know what emotional abuse was. You probably didn't know what narcissistic abuse was. You lived in fear. You lived in codependency. You lived in such lack that you allowed this person to have control over you in some way, shape, or form. And that's just the reality. It doesn't mean that we blame ourselves. It doesn't mean that we're so upset that this happened. It means that this relationship was a learning opportunity that you had or have to learn about post-traumatic stress, abuse, what a healthy relationship should look like. When I am dating, am I codependent? Am I needy? Am I projecting what I want this person to be, and they're not capable of being that person? So learning about self-development and relationships and all these things is so important. So when you are experiencing any of these symptoms, I always say, welcome pain. If you can welcome your pain and your uncomfortable thoughts, for some reason, we've just been programmed to want to suppress everything that we're thinking. But if you welcome it and say, okay, I'm having obsessive thoughts about my ex right now. Why am I doing this? And you start asking yourself the questions so you can parent yourself, so you can coach yourself, so you can get to what really is the underlying issue here of this symptom that I'm having. Okay, I'm having this symptom because of something that I went through. I get that. But how do I begin healing that part of myself? And that's what I teach in my practice every single day, is learning how to have that healthy dialogue with yourself. And I don't mean just positive self-talk. Anyone can have positive self-talk. Everyone can suppress, what it is that they're really feeling, what they're really thinking, but being able to be your own therapist, be your own life coach, be your own support system, and have a healthy inner dialogue with yourself in order for you to work through the things that really scare you and make you nervous. That is mental health. That is being emotionally healthy and mentally healthy. And that's what we were supposed to learn growing up. But unfortunately, even our parents probably still don't know how to do this. So I hope that this has helped you understand a little bit about post-traumatic stress. I know I didn't go into like all of the symptoms and everything like that, but you can Google that list yourself and definitely get that information. I more so wanted to give you the tips and tools that you can do on a day-to-day basis to be mindful as to when this symptom comes and how to handle it within yourself. So if you do have any questions or if you are interested in private coaching, I always link that information down below. And if you would like to follow me on social media, I will link that down below as well. And I will see you in my next video.